Well, I'm Joe Greenslade. I'm one of your board members and treasurer of this great institution of love. It's a privilege to be up here. I have a very important topic to me, or facet, which is elegance. I value elegance greatly, and I've entitled today The Elegant Belief System. It's the principles of unity. Da Vinci says, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And Einstein said, everything should be made as simply as possible, but not any simpler. And I keep that in mind all the time. You know, I've found that in life, our first inclination to addressing an issue tends to be somewhat complicated. And if we'll take a breath and let God get involved, the solutions become simpler and simpler until we get them down to their essence, which is that point of simpler but yet no simpler. As simple as possible, yet no simpler. Many of you know that I'm a great fan of modern art, and I'm drawn to minimalism. Isn't that a surprise? First time I ever saw Mondrian, I thought, man, is that cool? Just a bunch of black lines and beautiful colors. Quite simple, yet elegant. And Calder's animals. I mean, there's only about 12 lines there. Anybody not get what it is? You know, I mean, that is as simple as it gets, and I greatly appreciate that. Anybody ever struggle with getting a jar open? Man, that's a universal problem. So there's many, many solutions to it. Now, I don't know, I'm sure that works great, but how many gears, and we probably got to plug it in, and man, I bet it opens those lids just like crazy. But, on the other hand, we can have a piece of rubber molded that goes on a variety of common sizes, stick it on there, grip it, and turn. Now, that's pretty darn simple. It's just a die that's made, and some plastic is injected into that, and all of a sudden we've got a solution. Now, I even like this one on the right better. Just a little rubberized cone. Because it's a cone, it fits all kinds of sizes. It gives you a bigger thing to grip than just the edge of the thing. Now, I don't see how you can get any simpler than that. So, there's great elegance in simplicity. Now, many of you know that Lillian is a marvelous cook. Now, I'm going to admit, when we first got together, she was hiding her light. I had no idea the extent to which she could cook and how good she could cook, and I learned to greatly appreciate that, as have obviously many of you here. But in my enthusiasm for elegance and simplicity, as a wonderful wife, when we first got married, she'd get up every morning and she'd go in the kitchen and she'd cook me something great so I could get a good start. You know, they say never miss breakfast. But I couldn't help myself. I'm watching her, and you know, she goes to the refrigerator, and she goes to the stove, and she goes to the cabinet, and she goes to the stove, she goes to the drawer, she goes to the stove. And one time I said, "Hon, you know what? If you kind of thought this through a little bit, you know, you could do all that prep work right up front, and you know what? I bet you could make that breakfast in about half the time. And you know what? I was absolutely right. I've done it in half the time ever since. Now, I had sort of a circuitous spiritual quest. Came from a family of fanatical Baptists. Can't believe I kept going to church. But anyway, started out Baptist. Then I tried the Christian church, and they just called it the Christian church down on Magnolia. Anybody remember that? At corner of College and Magnolia. Anyway, the Christian church. Went there for a little while. And then I discovered that at First Methodist Church, they had pool tables. And I was about 12 years old, and I thought, man, if a church has got pool tables, this is a church for me. So anyway, joined a youth group, went there for a few years. When I turned 15, I started working weekends, and so my church attendance sort of dropped off. And then, being a typical person, when I had little children, and at this point I lived up in Illinois during my 15-year exile, and so I thought, I need to get back into church, and there was a little congregational church that was about this size. Really liked it. Went frequently. Went every Sunday. Had a good experience there. Then moved to Iowa. Everybody ever been to Iowa? Well, this morning the corn goes for so much a bushel, and pork bellies are so much. Boy, it's a different experience. You really get tuned in when you're in Iowa. Anyway, tried the Methodist church. Bless his heart. That minister about that long. So I didn't know any. I don't think I'd ever heard of a Lutheran church. So I went to the Lutheran church. That was kind of a interesting experience. I didn't know most of what they were doing. But anyway, went there for a while. Then moved again and tried Methodist again. That worked pretty well. Then after a while, I had some experiences with some Jewish clients, customers of mine. And I found them to be really, really neat. I learned how to negotiate. Learned a lot of interesting phrases. And they really helped my career get going. And I thought, there's something about these folks that I really like. And they were successful, at least the ones I dealt with, highly successful. And I thought, well, maybe there's some relationship to their successfulness and how I enjoy dealing with them and their faith. So I got with a rabbi and I studied for a number of months. And very interesting experience. Now, they're not real big on inviting folks in. And they make it rather arduous, but anyway, I went through that, and then it turned out that was not the path to go. And then I discovered the Unitarian Universalists. Boy, that was really eye-opening, and I really enjoyed it. And I did that faithfully for about 10 years. I said, man, there's a different way of looking at the world. And you can be good people without beating on the Bible all the time. And you can do good things. And you can be socially involved and make a difference in the world. And you don't have to put up with guilt and all that stuff. I thought, man, is that cool. So I did that for about 10 years. Then, I'm sure I'm the only one in here, but I got a divorce. And any of you have been through it know that kind of shakes you up a little bit and makes you think about a lot of things. So anyway, it was a small congregation, and somebody said, hey, there's a bunch of beautiful single women down at First Methodist Church. I said, well, that's for me. So I went down there on the hunt, And by golly, after a little bit, Lily and I made a connection and found out she was a lot of fun and just the sweetest person I'd ever run across. And so, y'all know, 22 years now, she's been enduring. Well, I got a little dissatisfied with the Methodists. Frankly, when they took the position that they didn't welcome gays into Methodism on a very formal basis, I didn't have a lot of experience with gay folks, but except through my activity in the arts, and I greatly admired those that I knew well. And I thought, you know what? Where's love? Where's unconditional love except these categories of people, one of which are gays? And I just went, you know, I don't do hypocrisy very good. So got dissatisfied. Looking around, anybody know Sherry Seto? Lillian was doing some things with Sherry Seto, and Sherry Seto says, well, y'all ought to come to this place that we go to. We're all about goodness and prosperity. I went, you pulling my leg. There's no such place as that. She says, well, give it a try. So we went, and by golly, that was it. Been there ever since. Now, my experience had been with, I categorize it as complex belief systems. I don't know about y'all. You know, I was associated with biblical things for most of my life, and every once in a while I thought, you know, if I was really devout, I'd read that whole Bible. I mean, I heard that over and over. You ought to read it page, you know, front to back. Grasp it all. I don't know about you folks. About one page in and I'm going, I haven't got the slightest idea what the hell you're talking about. And probably nobody in here except Jim Anderson's read that thing cover to cover. But I didn't get very far, but I accepted, you know, for years and years. That was the basis on which I went. I accepted that. And I never participated in Islam, but I have since learned to think that it's pretty darn cool. You know, there's good people in every faith, and we just need to hug one another a little bit more. Then I did try the Torah, but of course that's really very much the Old Testament. And I found them very complex, and I knew I wanted to be spiritual, I wanted to be religious. It did something for me. I couldn't really get my arms around it, but it did something for me. And so I kept looking. And you could say, well, it's not so complex. We got 10 commandments. How many of you in here can recite the 10 commandments from memory? No, can't do it. But it's the basis on which we do all of these things. And I noticed when I was putting this together, there's 2 do's and 8 don'ts. Well, I don't know about you. I kind of got hung up on positive affirmations and things early on. And again, back to my longing and love of simplicity, Einstein says, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. You know, I believe that. I believe that. If you can't tell somebody what you believe, do you understand what you believe? I don't know. So anyway, that kind of makes me think, whoops. And then at, I believe I was 54, first walked in the Unity Church and thought, wow, first time I went, wow, this is about positive stuff. And one of my favorite sayings, minister says, what goes around comes around. I went, hey, he's talking to me. All right, love it. Okay. Well, learned about Myrtle Fillmore and Charles, I love this, Sherlock Fillmore, because I think he was Sherlock. He dug and dug and dug and dug, thought about and came to some conclusions that were pretty neat. Myrtle, unusual for her time. She had some college education, which was real unusual for women in the late 1800s. Poor thing was sickly, had tuberculosis. But she and Charles were inquisitive about things, and they attended some New Thought led by the Dr. E.B. Weeks. And he said something to the effect that God wants you to be healthy. God wants you to be prosperous. God wants you to have all the good and the riches that life has to offer. You just have to believe it, and God will help it become so. Well, she was sick, could barely walk a block. And she thought, well, she'd, done the conventional things at that time, which wasn't much about tuberculosis. And she started praying. And God, thank you for my health. Thank you for my health. Thank you for my health. Thank you for allowing me to be healthy and whole. I see myself as healthy and whole. And as she's doing this month after month, now she can walk further than the block. And her neighbors, they knew her, they loved her. Poor little old, she was young, but she was just so decrepit. And all of a sudden, she was walking better. And they said, Myrtle, what's going on? She says, what do you mean? They said, well, you got better color. You're walking like a normal person. What's going on? She said, well, I've learned to pray. Pray for what? Pray for health. Pray for prosperity. And it's working. And they said, Myrtle, would you pray for me? Myrtle says, well, I won't pray for you, but we can get together in a little group every once in a while and we'll pray together, and I'll show you what I've been doing. It became affirmative prayer. And so anyway, people started coming over to the house, and at first they did not want to interfere. It wasn't a religion. It was just a prayer group. They didn't have it on Sundays. They didn't want to interfere with other people's religion. And Charles, I don't think he was enthused at first as she was, but he was amazed at her progress. And then he became enthused and studied more and more. He was self-educated. I'm not sure he got through elementary school, but he was a big reader, influenced by his best friend's mother. And studied world religions, which I thought was really interesting back at that time. But he got really intrigued with what was going on with Myrtle and the success there. And so he eventually wrote extensively on his thoughts on metaphysical interpretation of the Bible and other religious texts. This is what Wikipedia says about the Unity movement. Unity teaches a positive approach to life, seeking to accept the good in all people and events. Unity began as a healing ministry, and healing has continued to be its main emphasis for over 100 years. It teaches that all people can improve the quality of their lives through thought. Unity has no particular creed, no set dogma, and no required ritual. It maintains that there is good in every approach to God and in every religion that is filling someone's needs. Its position holds that one should not focus on past sins, but on the potential good in all. Unity emphasizes spiritual healing, prosperity, and practical Christianity in its teachings. Illness is considered to be curable by spiritual means, but Unity does not reject or resist medical treatment. It is an inclusive faith that welcomes diversity of thought. Unity is accepting of the beliefs of others. Doesn't that just make you feel good to say, hey, I'm one of those? Man, oh man, that is good. Then I discovered the 5 principles of unity. When I get involved in something, I like to read about it. I like to figure it out, make sure I really understand what I'm doing. So I read a lot. I ran across the 5 principles. God is the source and creator of all. There is no other enduring power. God is good and present everywhere. We are spiritual beings created in God's image. The Spirit of God lives within each person. Therefore, all people are inherently good. We create our life experience through our way of thinking. There is power in affirmative prayer, which we believe increases our awareness of God. Knowledge of these spiritual principles is not enough. We must live it. Okay, I was really excited when I got it down to those 5, because you know what? I can just about memorize those. That's a simple explanation I can grasp. Then when I learned that the whole organization runs on love offerings, I went, ooh, that's cool. You mean they really have faith that if they've got something to say, people will pay to support it? I mean, I'd been in all those churches I listed for you, and I'd always been on the fundraising committee and the pledge drives, and I understand some religions even assess their members. And I thought, man, that love offering thing is for me. Well, I was hooked. I said, man, that's it. I'm here. All right. Then, here's my thoughts on these 5 principles. On the first one, we don't care whether you call it God, Allah, Yahweh, Spirit, Mind, Trust, Higher Power, Love. Doesn't make any difference what you call it. We believe in a spirit that resides within us. Don't need intermediaries. Don't need explanations. It's simple enough to grasp and understand. That's what helps us to be accepting of all others. We are all interconnected, which is really interesting. Really interesting. We are one. The power of the source is good. Man, I like that. Okay. I like to believe, and I always like to figure things out, but I decided at one point in my life, you know what? I believe in this higher power or God or whatever we call it, and I don't have to figure it out. I have my own experiences that tell me that something beyond me is working for me and for my betterment, on my behalf. Well, I love when science backs it up. This thing started 100 years ago, and now there's these people back in 1964 that said the interrelationship of human consciousness and the observed world is obvious in Bell's theorem. Human consciousness and the physical world cannot be regarded as separate entities. What we call physical reality, the external world, is shaped to some extent by human thought. The lesson is clear. We cannot separate our own existence from that of the world outside. We are intimately associated not only with Earth we inhabit, but with the farthest reaches of the cosmos. This assertion is so audacious that it would be dismissed out of hand were it not for the scientific stature of its chief proponent, David Bohm, a former associate of Einstein, professor of theoretical physics at Birkbeck College University in London. He is regarded as one of the most preeminent theoretical physicists of the day. Yeehaw! All right. Principle number 2. There is a reference to something like the golden rule in every religion. Universal. Isn't that interesting? It's in every one of them. I associate this with Jesus' words, love thy neighbor. We appreciate all people. And here's one that I grasped onto years ago that has helped me tremendously. He without sin cast the first stone. You know, when you want to get down on somebody, just think about that. Tolerance, love it, forgiveness, compassion, unconditional love, respect for everybody else. Man, that's what I get out of that second thing. Has anybody in here ever read a self-help book? Well, I started reading them when I was right out of college. This is the first one I ever picked up and read. And I went, woo-wee, golly. What a person can conceive and believe they can achieve. I thought, isn't that interesting? Does that sound anything like mind action to anybody here? Well, I'd never heard of, mind action. But I thought, by golly, this sounds convincing. I'm going to put it to work. Well, it's mind action, it's creative visualization, self-fulfilling prophecy. That power of our unconscious works for us 24/7. And I learned along the way, positive thinking is just absolutely worthless unless you act on it. So, as soon as I read that book and it said, write something down, look at it every day, every night before you go to bed, and it'll work. Well, I said, I want to be the president of some organization. I want to be the president. Now, I had my first job out of college. And the company I went to work for had 1,000 folks. Well, I did a lot of things. A lot of things they didn't ask me to do, but I did, and I gave to the company. And 6 years later, I was one of the 12 top people in this company of 1,000 folks at about 25 years old. Didn't make it to president, but I went out and started my own, and then I was president. I was over everybody. Now, it was only me, but I was over me. All right. Then, as I got excited about entrepreneurship, I thought that John DeLorean was the coolest thing since sliced bread. He worked for General Motors, and he wore these wide collars and long hair, and just, he was designing cars that were selling, and I thought, man, this guy is cool. So, long before his car came out, he had the designs, and I had all his articles. Every time I ran across an article, I pulled it out, and I stuck that picture, there's one very similar to that, up on my bulletin board that was right above where I worked all the time. And there was no way I was going to ever be able to afford one of those cars. No way! But every time I sat at my desk, and you know what? I bought the second one sold in northern Illinois. Now, I really shouldn't brag about that because that was pretty stupid, but I was convinced that mind action was for real. Again, going back to simplicity, I ran across this and I absolutely love it, and I tell it to the young folks that I work with. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you are right. This determines our future, not circumstances. There are circumstances we have to deal with, but how we deal with them depends on how we think. One other thing I learned about this is that, we don't get everything we ask for, and that's really lucky. I've had a few things that I thought would be really cool, and circumstances didn't allow me to get them. In retrospect, I went, woo, dodged a big old bullet, So that reminds me of the phrase, let go and let God. If we can force those things, we can force what we want to happen. But you know what? I finally learned those things that I forced to happen, they really weren't what I was hoping for. And I learned that if I put forth the right kind of effort and I took my time, exercised some patience, which is really hard for me, that things turn out for the best. Now, affirmative prayer, I already kind of told you the background on that. I think it's great. It came from a very practical experience of one person who's taught it now to hundreds of thousands of people around the world. Affirmative prayer. The essence of affirmative prayer is seeing where you want to be as though you already have it. It's not, oh God, please get rid of all this stuff, and oh God, please, oh God, please. It's, God, thank you for my health. Thank you for my prosperity. Thank you for letting me be this person I want to be. It took me a little while to figure that one out when I read about it. But I realized, that's just back to mind action. It's very closely associated. And it's amazing. Pray for gratitude. Pray for forgiveness. Prayer puts us in touch directly with whatever we want to call our spirit directly. We don't need any intermediaries, and I love that. You got to plug into the power of prayer. Again, going back, I like science. It says, hey, you're not nuts. Here's a world-renowned doctor, wrote a book called A Handbook on Religion and Health, and he concluded people who are spiritual and or religious live healthier lives, have significantly shorter hospital stays, are less likely to die after heart surgery, and have 50% lower rate of strokes. I don't know about you, but that sure sounds pretty good to me. So, any rate, another doctor did a 30-year study, and he said definitely that affirmative prayer affects our body. All forms of prayer, he says, evoke a relaxation response that quells stress, quiets the body, and promotes healing. Now, the question comes up, and I guarantee you go on the internet, you can read lots of stuff about this. Does prayer make any difference? Yes. I say yes, because of personal experience. But the way I think it works, it's most important that we believe our health will improve, that we believe we can get where we want to go. But when you folks gather around me and say, Joe, we see you as healthy and whole, or Gene, or whomever, that just deepens our commitment and belief in that. Whether it travels over the waves or not, I don't know, But all these letters and cards and calls and visits, it just gives you strength that power within you goes into high gear. Amen. And I don't care if you want to call it a God thing or a brain thing. Who cares? It works. Forget the controversy. Okay, when I learned about this is a little something that I came up. I think it's original, but I can't swear to it. But it's my mantra, and particularly when I get in stressful times, this is what I recite. Spirit, please help me to say and to do the right things at the right time, in the right way, for the right reasons, and let all those reasons be based in love. And I just, I believe it and it works. That's the only thing I really pray for. I'm always grateful for where I'm going to be, but when I say a prayer, it's just for these things. Let me control my emotions myself and do these things in the right order, in the right way, so that they're good. Now, here was the clincher. When I read number 5, I went, sign me up. Knowledge of these spiritual principles is not enough. We must live them. Your beliefs don't make you a good person. Your behavior does. I thought, man, let's quit talking about it. Let's get in gear and do something. What I found to enrich my life, to get where I want to go, I help myself by helping everybody I can. Everybody I come in contact to. If they need some help, some advice, a reference, I'm going to do it. I want to do it. And it's interesting, and that was one of the principles called going the extra mile in that Master Key to Riches book. And here's the way I look at it. Up top, if I put enough love into the bucket for somebody, it starts to go over. And then it goes down into this little mechanism where it goes from there and it goes to those and fills them up. And all of a sudden, I got the biggest bucket in the whole thing. But the important lesson I learned, it's not tit for tat. You don't go up and say, Glenn, I'm going to do something really good for you. Now, what you going to do for me? You don't do that. You do it for Glenn, you do it for Pat, you do it for Linda. And my gosh, the help that I need just comes from all directions and the love. And it's just such a powerful thing. And I tell a little story, as y'all know, most of you know, my passion is working with underprivileged high school students to go to college. And I tell them this story. They don't know that they're getting indoctrinated by unity principles. I don't tell them that. But I tell them a story. I say, okay, I got to tell you about effort and rewards. And I said, you think about this. Anybody know how a wood-burning stove works? Duh, we put wood in it and light it. Okay. Well, if you want to be warm and you're cold, do you go up there and say, stove, give me some heat and I'll go out and chop you some wood? No, you go out there and you find the wood and you chop it and you haul it in and you get kindling and you get some newspaper and you get some matches and you till your head falls off and then all of a sudden you got heat. That's the only way it works. That's the way life works. We do the work and we're the recipient of all kinds of rewards. Now, I refer to when I found unity as my unity eureka. I was confrontational. As a young person, man, I put up my dukes all the time and got great satisfaction from that. And as I got older and started using my brain instead and fought a lot of matches and won a lot of matches. And when I read these 5 principles, I went, you know what? I'm through with confrontation. Not going to do it anymore. I'm through with it. I'm dedicating all situations to being viewed through love. Interesting thing about that, it comes through. I belong to about 6 organizations. Every time they got people fighting, they say, Joe, would you work with them and get some good results? Because I won't fight. I won't let other people fight that are within the realm I have some influence over. My stress level dropped to about 0, and it had been out the top as long as I was push. Man, I didn't have one monkey on my back. I had about a dozen. Push. Never satisfied. Let go and let God and did this. And I, in college, in my junior year in college, I heard about Maslow's hierarchy of needs the first time. And the first time I read about self-actualization, and I was way far from that. I was down on the survival level, essentially. I thought, what a cool place to be. And about 40 years later, or about 35 years later, when I decided to devote myself to love, I started self-actualizing. Put on my rose-colored glasses and says, come on, world, we're going to do some good things. All right. Now, as I said, I like to simplify things. I like acronyms. They help you remember stuff. And I looked at those 5 principles, and I mean, over and over, I thought, okay, let's see, what acronym can I make out of these 5 unity principles? And nothing came. And like I said, I can't recite all 5 of them word for word. I sure know what their meanings are. But here was my interpretation. I said, love is my source and the source of all existence. Love all others and myself. Love the vision of your future. Love my life, my health, and the others through affirmative prayer. And love all through my actions. Now, how many of you can remember love, 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 love? Now, how hard is that? Love, 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 love. Repeat after me. Love, 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 love. That's my interpretation of those 5 principles. As part of my work with the high school students, we've got a group of mentors. We meet periodically and kind of go over strategies and things to work with these kiddos. And I used this facility one Saturday morning. It was a great place to get together. It wasn't in use. These people came over. Now, one of these ladies I work with, she is wonderful. She was selected the outstanding CASA volunteer of last year. Now, any of you know anything about social work? That's pretty cool. And she's as devoted to our program as that. But she's very fundamentalist. Very fun. And I knew when I invited them over here, she was going to say, "What do you folks believe in?" So I was sort of prepared, and I had one of our one-page flyers, and I said, "Well, you can take this." But I said, "You know what? We're about love." And you know what she said to me after working with me for months? She said, "I get it. I've watched you." Now, how elegant is that?